one way to keep your RPGs popular and in playing groups and everything is to create a community content program. And that is exactly what Free League Publishing has done with their Year Zero engine and the Free League Workshop. I'm very excited. I thought maybe for Spiel Digital, we would talk a little bit about the Free League Workshop and the Year Zero engine and how you can create your own content and put it up in the Free League Workshop. And you can also, there's also other ways that you can get started in this RPG industry. And so I thought I would bring on two folks that I think are great in this for this panel. Of course, the man behind the Year Zero engine, Tomas Härenstam, and then podcaster turned RPG professional, Dave Seamark from the Effekt podcast. Let's bring them both on, and we'll talk a little bit about the Year Zero engine and the Free League Workshop. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving your time today for Spiel Digital.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good to be on.
Absolutely. Do you want to let's have you introduce yourselves? This is the panel. We're going to talk about certain things for about 20 minutes, and then the last half of the session we will open it up to viewer questions, and we'll talk about maybe any questions that they might have about designing their own Free League content. Tomas, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tomas Härenstam. I'm one of the founders of Free League, and I've been sort of the one responsible for most of our rules, I guess. So that's kind of been my thing throughout the years. And what turned out to be the Year Zero engine is I'm responsible for that. I came up with it for the Mutant Year Zero game. It's like 6 years ago now. And that turned into the Year Zero engine.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Dave?
I'm Dave. Dave Seamark from the Effekt podcast. Started out podcasting because I loved Mutant Year Zero and Coriolis. Me and my co-host Matthew, and from there we've taken off and managed to be invited to do a bit of work and worked on Alien and some other bits and bobs, which is fabulous. So delighted to be here.
Like I said, there's many ways to get started in the RPG industry and to be part of this whole industry that's going on. Content creating is one of them, and I know Dave did a great job, and he's worked on the Alien game, so I thought maybe we'd have him just give his insight as to what it was like. And then Tomas, let's talk a little bit about the Year Zero engine. It's an open game license, which was part of a stretch goal for the Forbidden Lands campaign. Was that something that you originally intended for when you set out that campaign, that was going to be a thing for folks to kind of play with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we came up with the idea during the Forbidden Lands Kickstarter. It's quite a while ago now. It must be like 3 years ago or something. We ran that Kickstarter. I mean, I think the idea was that we have always encouraged and enjoyed people doing their own stuff with our games, and that's kind of part of the whole RPG experience, I think, to kind of not just play the games, but tinker with them and make them your own and make your own games based on existing games and just mixing and matching and doing it. And we really want to encourage that. And we started looking at doing like an open game license for this engine. So that's what we did, and it's out there now. We never really properly like released it, but the document is out there, and it's maybe we can post a link to it. Anyone who wants to can use it. It's got some rules for how you can use it, but they're very clear and they're in the document itself. So as long as you follow the rules, you can copy and use the rule system for your own games and change it around the way you feel. That's just, as long as you sort of just follows a few basic rules. So yeah, I mean, the idea is that, I mean, because we have done much the same thing. We started out using the rules engine for one game, and then we decided to use a version of it for Coriolis, the second game we did. And then for the third game, Tales from the Loop and Forbidden Lands and Alien and now Twilight 2000 also use different versions of this core engine. And we feel it works pretty well to tweak because the core is very simple. And it's easy to adapt different setting and genres. So we wanted to open up the possibility for the community to do the same thing.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that, and that's one thing I really love about the majority of the Free League games is that they all use that engine. So that, so picking up another game is really easy to do, but it still has a different feel. And there's only a few things that maybe you have to keep in mind to when you're playing a different game. Yeah, I love that, and it's so simple, but yet it just works throughout all your lines. Let's talk a little bit about the Free League workshop and what it is. Can you explain to folks what it is and how maybe they get started creating their own content? If someone wants to say they're playing Forbidden Lands and they come up with an idea for content, what should they do if they want to put it in the Free League workshop?
Yeah, the Free League workshop is kind of connected to the open game license for the Year Zero engine. They're not really the same thing because the open game license, you can make your own games based on the rule set and then publish it any way you want, really. But you can also use the Free League workshop. The Free League workshop is a community content program on Drive-Thru RPG. We have a link to it on our website, so maybe we can post that link somewhere. I can dig it up. So from there you can just see what you need to do, and basically the Free League workshop, you can produce content, modules, whatever you like for our existing games, almost all of them, and publish that through our community content program on Drive-Thru RPG, and get it out there, and and sell it, and so it's a chance to actually write not official modules, but unofficial modules and we have templates for design, for the graphic design and so on. So it's an easy way if you want to create content and publish content for our games. It's fairly straightforward. So I think we'll just post the link and can find your way from there.
We'll make sure to post that. But you said that if someone wanted to create their own Year Zero engine game and put it out, and Dave, I know this is kind of why I brought you on, because you're in the middle of kind of developing your own and designing your own Year Zero world and setting and game. What should folks? What are the steps that folks should do when they're thinking about maybe doing and using this system for a game that they're coming up with?
Well, I think one of the key things for me with the whole Year Zero engine is that you don't need to change very much to really change the feel of the game. So the push mechanic in particular has got some great examples of how that's been changed in Alien, is a great example with stress, sort of mutant points and willpower in Forbidden Lands and Mutant Year Zero, and then the whole condition thing for Vess and Tales and things from the Flood. And a very small change of that, if you get it right, just changes the whole flavor of the game and the whole feel of the game. And I think that's what I love about it so much, because it does give you that ability to kind of infuse your game with the genre that you want and the feeling that you want, with some really quite small changes if you get them right. Now, the game that Matthew and I have been working on for the last year or so is a Wild West version of the Free League of the Year Zero engine, Tales of the Old West. And we've added a principle called faith, because everybody in the Wild West had some form of faith.
Sure.
Quite a lot of it would have been religious faith, but we're saying it doesn't have to be that, of course. It could be faith in yourself, it could be faith in your friends, it could be faith in nature, but that is the mechanic that will drive the push mechanic in that game. And we're still working on exactly how that will work. But again, I think it gives the feel, just the very fact that your faith in something is what's driving you west, really works nicely, I think.
That's really cool. I mean, I think that's the way we've approached our games also, that we try to think of maybe not just one thing, but like one big primary element that kind of permeates this particular version of the engine and the game, and try to drive that theme home. Like in Alien, it's the stress, obviously, and in your case, it's the faith. And I mean, there are other changes also, but I think identifying that one key element in that you also use in the rules, and it's usually connected to the push mechanic. It doesn't have to be, but it tends to be the place where you can infuse theme in a very effective way. So I think that's very much in line with how we have approached using the engine ourselves.
So you would say that that's probably the first thing that folks should, like, if they're thinking about building a setting or building a world, what they should probably build that push mechanic and try to figure out what that push mechanic should be first before they start building out the rest of their Year Zero game?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. It doesn't have to be done that way, but that's the way I would probably approach it, to find that what is the key thing. It's better to do that, I think, to identify those core themes and how to express that in the rules, rather than starting tweaking the skill list or something, because the skill list is like important, but it follows from that main theme. So I think it's the best place to start is with that core thematic element.
I think the idea of having a really clear idea of what you want the game to be like is really important. So for the Wild West one, we're not doing any weird stuff. This isn't about vampires in the Wild West or aliens or anything. This is about the bad stuff that people do to other people to get ahead through the Wild West. And that was a decision that, the West makes you, and your faith will drive you. These are kind of the principles that we worked out right at the start before we even put pen to paper.
Plus, right. I think a lot of Freely games kind of have that feel where it's, you're not quite sure if you're playing the good guy or the bad guy, and
yeah, exactly. And no one's really a good guy, no one's really a bad guy. There's shades of good and bad.
Exactly. The other thing that I really like about the Year Zero engine is talents. Like a lot of the talents in these games, they push story and they push character personality, player character personality more than just giving some sort of buff or I don't know, some sort of perk. It seems like the rule set, the way that they are in this Year Zero engine, really kind of pushes people to try to develop their character, not just stat wise, but with relationships and with situations and all that. And is that something that I'm picking up that's probably correct?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, it's always been the goal of the system to stay away from getting overly detailed in terms of numbers. It's not very granular. It doesn't have lots of skills. It doesn't have a very granular numeric scales or anything like that. Instead, we try to find more specific elements that can drive story, like you mentioned. And talents, yes, they do that too. They also provide a bit of fine-tuning, since the number of skills is fairly low, and we do that in order to keep it accessible, playable, that you actually remember these skills, and it's not just a huge list that you have to keep looking at all the time, because you probably learn these skills and know them really well. And then you have the talents as a way to fine-tune your character. But they also drive the kind of the character, their personality, and the talents can kind of do that. And also you have other things like the big dream and the relationships to other characters in the group, things like that, that would kind of we try to find these fairly simple, straightforward things, but that still say a lot about the character. It can drive story by keeping them front and center in the rule system.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I one of the things that I really like about some of the talents is that, as you say, they do completely push or give the player such a clear idea of the character of that person. Right. So just taking a couple from Alien, for example, that I'm most familiar with, like personal safety is the one where the character can step out of the way of danger and let it hit somebody else, and that immediately says something about that person. Right. And there's another one we produce, bodyguard, which does the other way around, which again says something about that person, and I really like that. One of the things I was just sort of laughing to myself about when you were talking about the skills, Thomas, is that we play all of these games, and from one day to the next, we are kind of totally confused about which skill set are we working on today? Right. Is it observation, or is it something else? Which is okay. It's not a problem, but it's just a quite interesting.
No, I mean that's true. That is a bit of a thing. I mean, we do try to keep the system fairly uniform between games, but yes, I mean the skill list is not exactly the same. So if you play a lot of games, you might get confused with which skill set are in this game and which one were the other game.
Yeah, but they're kind of genre specific, aren't they? They're designed to give the feel of, they're changed to give the feel of the genre that they're playing to, which is a really good idea. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So one question I had for you, and this is just me personally, I'm just kind of curious as more than anything else. You've had to tweak some of the, most of the games to kind of fit different genres and different settings. Has there ever been a change to the push mechanic that you first implemented as you were designing a game, but then you're like, nah, that doesn't quite work. I'm going to change it to, I think this does it better. And like, I guess I'm wondering, like, what else do you have planned for this push mechanic? Because I would love to see, because that seems to be kind of the thing that that drives. Because Alien just totally took that stress mechanic and changed it dramatically, but it still was familiar. So I'm just wondering, like, what else do you have up your sleeve, like there, Tomas, for the push mechanic?
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe it's just me kind of more thinking in my head more than anything else, but.
No, that's fine. Well, actually, I mean, we're working on now, obviously Twilight 2000.
Right.
There, I would actually say that what kind of sets that apart and the most thematic elements of that game are probably not directly related to the push mechanic. It does have a push mechanic, but it's not as front and center actually. In that game, we actually kind of switch things up a little bit, and we have introduced a bit of a different version of the engine. I mean, they're all different, but this one is a bit more different than the others. In that it does use dice pools, but not for the stats and skills. It only uses a dice pool for ammo, and since this is Twilight 2000, ammunition is going to be a big thing. And really, I think the ammo dice and the way ammo dice are used, I would say, is the most like unique and thematic thing for Twilight 2000. So that's another way of approaching the system also. But then we're also working on some other games, upcoming games, where the push mechanic will definitely be a big part. The one I'm thinking of, we haven't really announced yet, so I can't really tell you much about it.
That's fine. I'm just
yet.
Yeah. Personally,
yeah. But looking back, we had a couple of ideas and things that we also tried and threw out. I mean, just also how the push mechanic works as a whole. I mean, in the first iterations of Mutant Year Zero, they were very, very punishing. They were much harsher than the one that came actually to be the version we actually went with. I think that was good because it was very. I mean, it was. I mean, the way it works now, you can in Mutant Year Zero and some of the other games, not all of them. You will degrade your attributes by pushing. That's kind of how it works. But only when you push. In the early versions, you basically did that even if you didn't push the roll. So it was you would kind of go down very quickly, and we really just realized that doesn't quite fly. So we worked quite a lot on that back then, and then. Yeah. Also, Coriolis, the prayer. I think we knew that we wanted to go with something like that because the worship of the icons is such a central thing in Coriolis. We wanted to tie that to the mechanics, but that was also something we tinkered with quite a bit. So it's always been a process. I mean, I'm sure we had versions that we never came to use. So
like I said, I think what really kind of piqued my curiosity as far as what maybe you have stashed away for different mechanics is the Alien IP. It just when you made the announcement that Freely had brought in the Alien IP and that you were putting out a role playing game, I was like, I wonder how they're going to do that and make it feel because we've played Tales from the Loop, we've played Mutant, and it's like those don't really feel like Alien. How are they going to change this so that it feels like the Alien movies? And it was just a simple change, but yet it just totally sold it. So it makes me wonder, like, what other things can we do with this, or they can freely do with this Year Zero engine and just tweak it here and there and really kind of give it a whole different feel. But yeah. I'm sure we'll find out in days and months and years to come. But that's just
and also just to see what others are doing, just like Dave
exactly.
and other people who are working with the OGL. I mean, I know there are other games out there being made also based on the Open Game License, and that's really cool to see because others will come up with other ways of using it that we never thought of.
Is this since this open the OGL is out there? Do you get a lot of folks that contact you about it and their ideas for games?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we do get a couple of emails now and then about someone wanting to use it for this and that. But the cool thing about the OGL is that you don't need to ask our permission.
Right.
As long as you follow the rules in that document, you can just go ahead. So there, you don't, that's, you can just take it and run with it. So that's one of the ideas, that it doesn't require our approval or anything like that, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's see here. So we're about halfway through our session. I'm going to open this up. If folks have any questions for Tomas and Dave, let us know in the comments. And if you could kind of keep it towards the Year Zero engine and maybe anything that you might have. Maybe you're a potential designer and you're thinking about creating a game, or you're thinking about creating content for one of the Free League games, feel free to let us know, and we'll be glad to, you've got two really brilliant minds here that have worked with the Year Zero engine, and it would be great to kind of get their insight on maybe an idea that you have in the works. So you're working right now with Twilight 2000. You've said that this is a little more crunchier than previous Year Zero games.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. It's a fun challenge, but it is proving interesting. I mean, it's not only that the rules themselves are crunchier, they are to some extent, even though we still try to keep, our principles where it comes to keeping like the number crunching down to a minimum, the skill lists, it's still fairly short, but we're keeping that, but I think the main challenge is that we want to get in. I mean, in a game like Twilight 2000, gear and vehicles and that's
Matthew, by the way. That's Matthew.
I figured. Yeah.
He's only jealous because he wanted to be here as well. I told him no.
Yeah, good. No, I mean, but I think the key thing for Twilight 2000 is to get gear, vehicles, weapon, all of that in there, and they need to matter. So it needs to kind of take into account. I wouldn't use the word realistic, because realism in role-playing is it's a tricky concept, I think. But it needs to have an authentic feel. It kind of needs to feel true. And that means these things need to matter. If you have that particular vehicle and that particular, I don't know, anti-tank weapon, this needs to make sense, and it needs to be based in actual fact. And that just puts a whole new level of sort of research and just kind of crunching those numbers. And we had some great help from some of our consultants. Some of them are from the military themselves, so they know this stuff in actual life. And we take that and try to kind of turn it into rules that keep this authentic feel, but still are fast and playable. So that's quite a challenge. I mean, in other games that are more fantastical in terms of their setting, you can get away with a lot more. Even in Alien, you can get away with more, because it's kind of still, even though it's hard sci-fi, it's still set in the future, and it's still like more of a Hollywood feel to it. I mean, it's still based on movies, so you can get away with more things in terms of just in the interests of drama. You can kind of do more, and you don't need to be. But in Twilight 2000, we need to keep everything a little bit more grounded in reality, and it's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. And plus, you have an existing player base that has played with these games, so you've kind of have expectations to kind of hit there too. So that's got to be a challenge in trying to find that balance between what you want to create and what you want to make sure that the fans are appeased with.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the game has been around. I mean, obviously the first version since '84, and there's definitely a community there that has been playing these games ever since, and never stopped. And I mean, obviously they're very committed, and they know exactly what they want, and they might not get exactly that, because everyone wants different things, and obviously some of these hardcore players might get some of what they want, but not everything, and that's always going to be like that for any new version of any popular older game that gets a new version. There's always going to be that, oh, do I like this or that version better, or that version, which is fine. We listen to them, of course, and we of course take their feedback very seriously, and it has already impacted the game in many different ways. But we still also need to kind of stay true to our philosophy of game design and so on. It wouldn't make any sense just to copy an old game and reprint something that someone else did 30 years ago. I mean, if you really want to keep playing everything the same, the old game is still there to play. I mean, you can still continue playing the old version if you want. And that's something we try to also kind of promote, that we have nothing against the earlier versions still being out there and being played. I mean, basically what we try to do with our releases to promote the franchise and the game as a whole, no matter what version you prefer to play. But obviously we want most people to enjoy our new version. Obviously, that's the goal.
All right, let's looks like we've got quite a few questions, so let's go right through. Primacy of Story says, I'm doing a Vaesen module for Mythic Quebec. There is a page with the legal text we have to put in our Free League workshop content, but the text isn't there for Vaesen. Interesting. Well, we'll have to take a look at
interesting.
that.
Yeah, we'll have to have a look at that. I mean, if this is in the Free League workshop, it should basically have the same kind of content in the kind of legal text that the others do. So maybe it's something we should have a look at. I'll ask Nils about it. He's my colleague who's in charge of that. So I'll put it on I'll mention it. I'll bring it to his attention. Yeah, we'll see if there is something strange there.
Let's see, we also get a question. This is, are you toying with the idea that something good enough published in the workshop could be edited and published by Free League proper? I think that also ties in with another question that we have that was one asked if Free League keeps track of the sales in the Free League workshop as to what sells really well and what doesn't.
Right. I mean, for the first question there, it's definitely possible. Yeah. I mean, if there's something that we feel this would be like the perfect thing to actually make into an official module, it's not impossible at all. Certainly. I think the challenge there is that we have so much to do and we're not very many. So it's a challenge of actually being able to get enough content out there, and that's one of the reasons for the Free League workshop in the first place, is also to get more content for the games out there, and which is and this is a great way of doing that, because a lot of the content on the Free League workshop is really, really good. I think, I mean,
it's very
a lot of it could definitely be published as official modules. I mean, I don't see any. I mean, you might need to do some work with I don't know, art and layout and so on. But I mean, I think the content is generally really good. So it's not a matter of it not being good enough. I think it's mostly a matter of we can only publish so much, because what we do in-house is we have a very limited bandwidth, and we need to be very careful with so we need to prioritize very intensely. So I think that's the reason that we haven't done that yet, as in pick up something from the Free League workshop and publish it officially. But it's because the Free League workshop is doing such a great job as it is. So yeah, it's not impossible, but I think it's not something we're doing very often. But yeah, not impossible.
Excellent.
And of course, there's also, just to add to that, if we pick up something that's really great, that we think it's also possible that we might get in touch with that particular creator or writer and talk to them about writing something else that we have planned already, because we do work with a bunch of great freelance writers and artists, and of course the Free League workshop is a great place to find talent like that.
Absolutely. Ben Rogers asked a question, and I think this is a great segue to plug the fact that the Mercy of the Icons Part 2 is available for pre-order on the Free League website if anybody has not been aware yet. But Ben Rogers asks, with the changes to the setting, no spoilers, from the next part of the Mercy of the Icons book, how will this affect creating new Coriolis material on the workshop?
Well, that's an interesting question. A little bit tricky to answer without spoiling, but in technical terms, it doesn't affect anything. I mean, as long as you follow the guidelines in the Free League workshop, you can publish whatever you want for Coriolis, as long as it kind of follows that. since these are not strictly official products in that sense, it's not like we will be checking if every piece of information there corresponds perfectly with the established lore or anything like that. It's not, that would not be possible for us to do, to check content in that kind of way. So as long as it follows the general guidelines, you'll be fine. So you can definitely incorporate what's been published officially into new things on the Free League Workshop, or you can choose not to. I mean, it's really up to you as a creator whether you want to bring that stuff in or not. So basically, it doesn't change anything in terms of the Free League Workshop, I would say, unless you wanted to.
Sure. Orcbox asks, this may be a rather out there question. How would you guys make a fantasy world in the Year Zero engine with things like large battles and a more stable population?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I've done a little bit of. So I was just going to say that one of the other comments was talking about historical, and I've done a bit of work around a Free League Year Zero game set in ancient Rome. And part of that is going to involve some big battles. So I've been trying to work on some rules there. So I think this is obviously not official. This is just stuff I've been doing myself. But the idea of trying to get the idea of a big battle without turning it into a tabletop battle game and have it play the battle through in 30, 40, 50 minutes, say, but actually make it feel like you're in the middle of a huge battle. So I think that there's a challenge in there, but I think if you want one end of the scale, you might want to go to Warhammer or something and get your figures out and play it all day. If you want the other end of the scale, then the rules have to be quite slick and subtle in order to get the feel of the battle without making the battle last as long as a battle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. And large-scale battles is it can be tricky in any RPG because you'd really have to mind. You can't just bringing more people into a battle will make it very unwieldy. So you need some kind of system for it that kind of also, I think, keeps the player characters important, so they don't just get lost in the mass, battle, but they still are the kind of the protagonists. And there's definitely different ways of doing that. There are some that I wouldn't call them large-scale battle rules exactly, but there are some rules for siege attacks against a stronghold in Forbidden Lands, and there is something similar in Mutant Year Zero for attacks against the Ark. So they're, in a sense, very, very abstract, simple rules for larger battles. And we're planning something similar for Twilight 2000 also, and that might be a little bit more involved, but it would still not be like playing a big miniatures war game for a whole day, because it kind of breaks the tempo too much. So we need to strike a balance there where it still feels interesting, but still doesn't completely stop the role playing and just becomes a war game, because you still want to maintain the sense of the characters being the center of the story.
Let's see here. Senjuro asks, any eras, genres you would like to see adapted to the Year Zero engine under the OGL?
What do you think, Dave?
Dave, is there any? I mean, you're the one that has been playing in the sandbox for a little bit, so.
Well, I can start with Wild West, of course, because I think someone's really talented who's doing that already.
I heard about that.
Ancient Rome is one. I mean, I'm a Roman historian for education, so the idea of doing something set in the late Republic where you can have battles not only on the field but also in the Senate and political battles, I think is really intriguing and quite enticing. I'm a great big fan of Age of Sail, so something like Black Sails, the TV series that would work. I think that would be really good. And again, from my point of view, I'd quite like it as a historical thing rather than a fancy, this is an alternative reality where you've got spells and magic and all the rest of it. I love that kind of stuff, but for games that I might want to create, I think I prefer a bit more gritty authenticity rather than realism, to use Thomas's example there. Sure. Authenticity is quite important. And one more, I'd love to do one around the Wars of the Roses as well. So sort of like early medieval kind of setting where you can well, it's like Game of Thrones, but with real history rather
Right.
than Game of Thrones made up history, which
Yeah,
is
it's
basically
interesting. I think though all of those are really great ideas, and I think, like you say, I think actual history is a little bit underused in RPG settings. I mean, it doesn't only go for the Year Zero engine. It's kind of overall. I think it's a little bit strange that there definitely are historical RPGs, but they're not that common. So I definitely think there is definitely much more to find there. There's also one other, but I can't really say because that's a game we're actually working on. So, but there is
that's
in a new genre that we haven't done before. Yeah.
As I was asking the question, I'm like, I don't know if Thomas can actually answer this question, or I think this might be a Dave question. But this is a question for you, Thomas, because I think this is a good question. And this I'm kind of curious as well. The Alien licensing. Are there any thoughts or takeaways from the process establishing a game with an existing IP? I'm assuming that the license was locked down before the development was underway. I'm assuming that's the case.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we had ideas. I mean, that's kind of how these things usually work, that we had ideas and we pitched them. And so, of course, we did some work before locking anything down, because we need to pitch something to them, and that needs to be thought through. So we definitely had some fairly advanced ideas on what we wanted to do, but not in terms of the exact rules text or anything like that, because that's not really what you need at that point, but just the kind of core themes, the way it should feel, and the kind of focus of the game, and all of that was there when we pitched it to the studio. So some of the work was definitely done before locking it down. But then, yes, before you actually get into like serious detailed development, we did have that agreement in place. No, it's been, I mean, so far, to my experience, we've done quite a few licensed games. Alien being the biggest one, obviously, but also Twilight 2000, and actually Mutant Year Zero is a licensed game, even though it's a little bit different because it's not a big IP in that sense. Maybe it will be, but it's still a license because we don't own that brand. Because it's an old RPG brand from the 80s in Sweden, so it's a license. So for us, it's been pretty good. I mean, we haven't had any big issues or problems with that. Of course, you need a bit more planning, and you need to be a bit more structured, maybe, so that you actually, because we make these, you have to submit, of course, and for review what we do. So the license owner has time to check everything and approve it. So that means you need plan things a little bit better. Another thing, I guess, is the simple, obvious fact that, I mean, for license agreements, they usually cover one particular type of product, like in this case, role-playing games. It doesn't follow that they necessarily also include something else, like a board game or a card game or something else. So that means, whereas for our own brands like Coriolis and Forbidden Lands and Symbaroum, we can do anything we want. If we want to do like a jigsaw puzzle tomorrow, we can do that, but that's obviously not the case for the licensed game. So that's something you might not always consider, but it's a factor in how we work with these franchises also.
Did we just get a surprise announcement of a Free League jigsaw puzzle line?
Did you? Maybe.
Wow,
Did you? I don't know.
I love this exclusiveness on the YouTube.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, it's not a horrible idea because you got some great artists and puzzles are hot right now.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway. Jerry asks, what exactly are the design pillars driving Twilight 2000?
That's an interesting question. That's a fairly, I mean, it's something you could discuss for quite a long time. Yes, but I mean, just the brief idea of it. I think the key, at least for me, the core pillar of Twilight 2000, and it's not so far from Forbidden Lands and Mutant Year Zero, which are my games. I mean, obviously, we're a lot of people working on them, but I was kind of the lead designer for all these three. Also Alien, but Alien doesn't have that in the same extent. But I think the other three are very much player-driven sandbox survival games. So for some reason, that's kind of something I've been drawn to. And Twilight 2000 is probably the most hardcore of the bunch. So this idea of really the free roaming style of play that is very much driven by players being able to go where they want. And I think the challenge there is to do that, but still maintain some kind of interesting storyline, because that doesn't just become random encounters that doesn't hold together in any way at all. It just becomes totally random. We don't want that either, but to have that freedom and that kind of procedurally generated content, but that still kind of connect to something bigger. And that's what we really try to do with Twilight 2000 also. I mean, that's one of the core things. I think the other core pillar is to get, it's not a game about the military, it's a game about survivors. There is a military theme to it, but you can also play civilians, definitely. But it's still combat and kind of military operations in that sense are important to the game. And to get to do that in a sense that stays away from being overly detailed, but still retains this authentic feel, and maybe even does it more so than some of the detailed games. I played first edition Twilight 2000. I think it's a very well built game, but it's pretty detailed in terms of the number crunching. And I think it's possible to even get a greater sense of authenticity in terms of how combat plays out than just adding more numbers. So that's kind of another thing we really tried to do with this edition, is to get that kind of authentic feel from combat without slowing the game down. So that's another important design pillar for Twilight 2000.
Nice. Tobias asks, are there any Year Zero engine versions using other dice than D6s?
Well, yes. Now that you mention it, that is actually the same. I mean, Twilight 2000 does exactly that, and that's, I think, the biggest shift from other versions of the engine. You might even call it a different engine, but I think there is enough there that's same to be able to claim that it's actually a version of the same engine. I guess you'll have to judge for yourself when you see it, because the alpha PDF is coming out in about a month from now.
Oh.
Yeah. But what it does is that instead of, I think, of using dice pools of D6s, which is the core for the other games, you have like step dice. So instead of having an attribute of 1 to 5 dice, you have an attribute that is scaled from a D6, D8, D10, D12 is the best die. So then the same with skills. So your basic die roll is going to be 2 dice that are of different sizes. So that kind of, instead of rolling 8 or 5 or 6 D6s, you will be rolling 2 dice, but they will be of different values. So it works a bit differently, and there's a number of reasons for this change in Twilight particularly. I think the biggest reason is that we added ammo dice, and ammo dice are D6s, and they're core to how game plays out. And if you would have that and the other D6s, you would basically have a bucket of D6s. So we needed to find some other way to do it to solve that problem. And I think it turned out pretty well, but that's one thing. And it's actually the other game that actually has something a bit similar is the artifact dice in Forbidden Lands, and they work in a similar way. Basically, their powerful artifacts and magical items can let you roll D8s, D10s, and D12s when using this particular item.
Frederick asks, when can we see Swedish templates in the Year Zero workshop for Mutant, Vaesen, and I'm gonna butcher that. So that's Forbidden Lands in Swedish. Yeah, I thought they were already there, but maybe you're right. Templates. Yeah, you're right. Okay, you can publish material in English or Swedish in the Free League workshop, but I think you're right. The templates, and because we have templates, design templates for InDesign, but also for Word, I think. So you can create, and I guess the templates are probably only in English. You're right. I guess it shouldn't be too hard to translate the templates, but yeah, that's probably doesn't exist just yet. But you can publish in Swedish. Unfortunately, we get some other, requests from the community in other countries for publishing under the Free League workshop in other languages, and the problem is, at the moment, we need to be able to review everything that's published there, and if it's done in a language that we don't understand at all, or at least not very well, it's just not possible to keep
know what's
keep track
actually
of it all. Yeah.
to keep track of it all. So at the moment, it's just not something we can do. Maybe at some later point we will be able to do that if we get some more people on board who might handle those kinds of reviews and keep track on what's being done. And I mean, it's not impossible that we might get there, but at the moment, it's English and Swedish only in the Free League Workshop.
Excellent. Just trying to go through and seeing, because we're kind of running out on time, and I just want to make sure that we've got most of the comments all caught up as far as the Year Zero engine is concerned. There was a question about virtual tabletop for Alien, but maybe I don't know if you can. Do you want to answer that question, or do you want to wait off?
What was the question?
The question was that now that you've released Alien RPG and Fantasy Grounds, any chance we can see any of your games in popular virtual tabletops?
Right. Yeah. As for Alien, it's actually kind of an interesting thing. It's like the person there says. It's actually already out there. We haven't announced it yet, and that's just because of some internal miscommunication, I guess. That it's out there on Fantasy Grounds. The whole Alien rule set, including Chariot of the Gods and Destroyer of Worlds, the 2 scenarios. We'll be announcing that like on Tuesday, I think. So this is a bit of a pre-announcement here. It will also be available on Roll20. So we'll releasing it on Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds at the same time. So if you want to play Alien online, you will be able to do that on Roll20 or on Fantasy Grounds. And yes, we are. That's a kind of something we've been working on this year, particularly to expand the content, the publications we have on virtual tabletops, and we'll continue to do that. We already have from previously Tales from the Loop is available on Roll20, and Symbaroum is available on Fantasy Grounds. And we'll definitely, I think, Forbidden Lands, it's on the way also. And I think in the long run, we want all of our games to be available on virtual tabletops. So it's definitely a prioritized area for us.
It's nice to hear, because I think that's how given the way this year has played out, I think we're seeing a major shift to people playing online. So anything that can help them do that is always a great thing, and to know that Free League is definitely addressing that is I think something that is very commendable, and very glad that we could bring it up. I think that's about it for all the questions. We're running out of time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining us in this session. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the chat or in the comments below, and we'll try to address them as they come in. I really thank everyone for being a part of this session. Let me just remind folks that if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, hit that subscribe button. And
do it.
We really appreciate all the folks that have become our Free League community here on YouTube, and we just like to do more and more things and connect with folks, since we can't connect, in person at conventions this year, and hopefully, we really like being in touch with the folks that enjoy our games. So we really appreciate everyone that takes the time out of their day to watch the content and be a part of that. Tomas, Dave, thank you so much for giving your time today. I know that you're very busy gentlemen, and
thank you.
Can't thank you enough for giving us a moment for this session. All right, folks, we'll be back a little bit later. We'll be doing a panel with Nils about turning art books into RPGs. And this is a topic that I think is really fascinating, because I think we're starting to see more and more. I mean, Free League has kind of started that ball rolling, but we're seeing it more and more in the industry. So I'm really excited to see and hear from Nils a little bit later. And then, Dave, you're coming back later this evening for an actual play of Alien.
I'm back in about 5 hours for Alien Alenia Bay. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right, folks.
That.
What's that?
Yeah, don't miss that one. I'm gonna be tuning in myself to have a look at that. So
no pressure then.
Yeah, no pressure at all, Dave. boss is watching. So,
No.
all right, folks.
Okay.
Be safe, be well. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You too.
Cheers,
Bye.
bye.